Hey everyone, so this is Darren with ADAS Depot, and with me I have Will Kepler, who's going to be enlightening us on sales tactics for ADAS calibration companies and vehicle diagnostic companies. So Will, thanks for joining us. We're really excited to speak with you.
Happy to be here, Darren, and good to see you at SEMA.
Yeah, no, it was great seeing you, and what a conference, what a trade show. I think there was just like a lot of energy, and it was great to see the momentum of ADAS calibrations. I think one thing just really quickly to highlight from our survey that we did around 2025 was that I think a lot of operators are still very confident on ADAS calibrations growth. I think the average growth rate that we saw in our data was 30% over the next, sorry, no, that was the last year's sales data, but rather 20% plus growth over the next 12 months. Pretty healthy. We're really excited about that. So, Will, yeah, the reason why we have you here is, you know, you've had a lot of success building out ADAS calibration businesses. So maybe just for everyone to know, can you tell us about yourself and your work on the ADAS safe side of things? Just tell us about, how large the company got to be, and just to frame things a little bit better, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, my name is Will. I've been, in Miami the last 3 years, really at ADAS Safe, an ADAS calibration company. It's a mobile company that was started down in Miami. And throughout my time there, my main responsibilities were going to market, building out new markets for our mobile ADAS calibration team. And so I started in Fort Lauderdale and kind of worked my way up to Jacksonville, North Florida, Savannah, Georgia, Augusta, some parts of North Carolina. And I did that for about 2 years now. And then I kind of transitioned over to Trak, which is the software company that ADAS Safe operated on. So pretty heavily involved on kind of the go-to-market, a little bit of the operations, and a lot of the product, the software side of things. Excited to be here, Darren, and talk to you guys about going to market and seeing what opportunities exist as calibrators,
Right.
ADAS service providers, and seeing what works and maybe what doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think like the go-to-market motion is a little bit new to some of our viewers. They're very familiar with like, how to do ADAS collaborations, or they're ramping up the curve, but sort of going out to market as a sublet is a little bit different for them, shall we say. So yeah, I'm just curious, like, how much growth did you see at ADAS Safe over your time there? You were building out these markets, you were, getting off the ground, talking to customers. Just tell us about like how well ADAS Safe did, and we can go from there.
Yeah, so great question. And I just also want to preface this by saying, it is kind of new to I think a lot of people that might be watching this, and it continues to be a little bit new to us. This is kind of a new field, a new go-to market industry, right? This hasn't really been done a whole lot before.
Hmm.
So I just want to preface it there. We're still trying to figure out kind of the best ways, but yeah, we have seen some success in the past. Um, like I said, we started down in Miami with basically three locations, three providers. And in about 2 years, maybe a little bit less than 2 years, we've grown to, I think, 7 or 8 different states, mostly in the
Wow.
Southeast, with around 25-ish independent mobile uh, service providers, trucks on the road today. So
Okay.
growing pretty
Okay.
quickly.
Yeah, no, that's really good to see, and really good to hear. And we at ADAS Depot are proud to be supporting you guys from an equipment perspective. But yeah, it's been incredible to see the growth. And it's part of the reason why we wanted to invite you here, just sort of share your wisdom with everyone else, whether or not they're in Southeast Florida or the Southeast US. But yeah, I think I'd love to understand just a little bit better. When you are sort of starting on the outside where you don't have an existing relationship, with a collision center or someone who might need ADAS calibrations, just high level, like how do you create opportunities to be that sublet ADAS calibration provider? What's your
That's
thinking? What's your playbook? Yeah, I'd love to hear
It's
about
a
that.
great question. It's also good to note that some things will work in some places. Those same things might not work in a different state or
Okay.
even in a different county. But I think the biggest constants that we have found is number one, the face-to-face interactions is by far the most effective.
Okay.
Um, we really try hard to understand the market dynamics. Um, Super heavily involved in auto body associations as well. And so there's kind of a lot there. I'll try to pick and piece them together. But for the in-person interactions to start, that's really the foundation of any, solid relationship. This is
Sure.
not a product that we're selling online or a subscription,
Sure.
so to say. This is kind of a relationship that is being built. Um,
Yep.
and there needs to be trust there, right? And the services
Okay.
need to be good. You need to be relied upon. So
Hmm.
we find face-to-face interaction, um, frequent check-ins, and really offering help and education rather than sale. You kind of have to look at this more like customer success rather than sales, if that makes
Okay.
sense.
So I hear you. Face to face is really important. Like in this industry, we see that with like mobile tool dealers who are showing up on time and just like the in person presence, which I think is really important because these shop owners are so busy and they don't have time to check emails or answer phone calls. But again, like that face to face, like that first interaction, like what are you talking about? How are you getting the ear? How are you getting their attention? Just tell me more about in that first meeting, what that face-to-face interaction might look like.
Yeah, good question. That first meeting can go a number of different ways, typically,
Hmm.
depending on who you speak to, of course. But the ideal first meeting is really about listening. You
Hmm.
really just want to ask as many questions as possible. Hey, what's your current process now? What does that
Hmm.
look like? And ask the necessary questions to get a full understanding on what they do now. So that way, when you're going to offer your service, right, the next time that you go in, or maybe it's that third time, depending on the subsequent conversations, you're going to be able to kind of tell, all right, they are doing, let's just ballpark it at 100 cars per month, right? That's a collision center that I'm talking to. They're repairing about 100 cars per month. And
Hmm.
let's just say that they're doing some calibrations, or at least that's what they say, and they're ballparking it at about 30 calibrations per month, right? Out of those 100 vehicles. But on the calibration side, you kind of know, okay, if they're repairing 100 cars, let's just say anywhere from 50 to 75 of those cars are going to require calibration. Again, depending on the market, rural versus major city. Um, so there's clearly a gap of they say they're calibrating about 30 of those 100 cars, but as a calibrator that about 60, 70, 75 of those cars should really be calibrated. So
Hmm.
that's kind of a delta. That's just one data point that you can then use in your next conversation with them. But that first meeting is really key to establish that you're talking to a decision maker, that you're getting all those data points and that information that you need out of
Hmm.
them, understanding their process, where their pain is, right? What tooling
Hmm.
they use. That's the most important thing for a first interaction, and just keeping it casual, right? This is not the end of the world here. You really want to be friends with people. And
Hmm.
ultimately, if it does work out in the end, you know, both parties are winning, both the calibrator and the collision center.
Okay, got it. And so as far as the decision maker, like typically, do you have to talk to the shop owner? Just to what extent are you speaking with, say estimators or technicians? Just help me understand like who you would like to talk to and just how you deal with with other folks that are almost like gatekeepers.
Yep. Great question. And I'm going to paint a uh, wide brush here with a wide brush. It's typically how these things work out is that you always have to go through kind of the gatekeeper or decision maker, owner, general manager first. That's always going to be that first point of contact. You never want to kind of go around that key player there. But once you get, for example, an estimate or two that they write, and you're going to quote it and see what calibrations it might need based on the estimate. Kind of once you get past that first step of being on good terms with the general manager and owner, you're going to want to trickle down. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but inverted, right? You're going top down. You need to talk to that general manager owner first, and then of course on the day-to-day level, once you're calibrating a car or two, right, the volume is low in the beginning, typically as trust is built. You're going to want to really get in touch with those estimators because they're controlling the cars day to day, and they
Mm,
make the decisions. Okay, the parts coming in for this car, it's going to paint on another car, and you really need to have them be bought into the process, and make sure that those line items are getting added to the estimate, or the supplement is being added into CCC, et cetera, et cetera. And it even goes further as well. Those technicians inside the collision center, even the detailers or painters, right? Because that's kind of towards the end of the repair process. It's getting closer to the calibration stage. Those guys are always good to meet and become familiar with too, because as the cars transition from intake, estimator writes the estimate, sends into the repair process, you're gonna, as a calibrator, kind of want to be able to track generally as best as you can where that vehicle is in the
okay.
process in order
Yeah.
to that then actually calibrate that vehicle in the end.
Okay. Interesting. So to paraphrase, it sounds like, you come in consultative approach, you speak with the owner, general manager, help them identify more opportunities to generate revenues.
Yep.
Take a look at a couple estimates. Once you sort of have the blessing to calibrate some cars, then you kind of like, continue to integrate yourself within that shop's operations and develop outwards from there with meetings with estimators and technicians and so forth. So okay,
Yep.
that's really interesting. Um, yeah, for those that say, hey, I'm just not interested. What are the most common objections that you receive from folks in having that, again, that initial conversation? They're just not interested, and yeah, how do you handle those?
Good question, and it of course depends by the person, but there's a couple different ways. I think the most common thing that we hear in that first meeting, trying to talk to a decision maker, is that XYZ reason, but the real core reason is that there's resistance to change, right? There's collision centers that have been in business for 50 years, and they've kind of followed the same process for 49 out of those 50 years. And so performing ADAS calibrations or getting into a process with a different company is change, right? And so there's resistance to that change, and there's a lot of the times there's rejections in that first meeting. But I
Hmm.
think it's important to, um, you know, be disciplined and come up with solutions to get a shot with new clients. For example, if you're trying to get with a meeting with a collision center owner or manager and they're very resistant to change, maybe it makes sense to do a vehicle or two for free, right? If you see in the lot that some of the cars are about to be shipped off, right, to the vehicle owner, you can offer to calibrate one or two of those vehicles for free, assuming that it requires a calibration, right? Just to show them that there are calibrations being missed. There's
Mm,
opportunities there that are being missed. And, with no risk, give me a shot on a vehicle or two. And then that kind of sparks the first, thought of trust and recognition, right? To get into a process with that shop. Not sure if that made sense, but that's one of the more common uh, things
yeah,
that we see from first
interesting.
time clients.
Yeah, okay. So just kind of, hey, like it's been working for me, but if you can sort of um, be proactive and highlight calibrations that need to be done and provide that service for free initially, hopefully that
Yeah,
highlights the calibrator's value to the shop. They're
yeah,
generating more revenue, right? Okay.
yeah.
That makes
And
sense.
and sometimes that comes in different forms too. That might be going in on that first meeting or second meeting with some of the position statements printed out, like GM,
Mm.
Ford,
Oh,
really
okay.
good. Those
Yeah.
are, hard documents that they can look at or they can throw in the trash. But a lot of the times, right, going in and saying, hey, here are the requirements from the OEM.
Yeah.
You do 20 GM vehicles per month, right? Let's just say again, 75% of those, 15 are going to require calibrations. Average ticket, let's just ballpark it at $500. That's $7,500 per month that you're missing out on just
Mm.
those estimates on just those GM cars. So it comes in different forms, but there's a lot of different ways you can kind of gain trust and credibility, and really add value on that first visit.
I like that approach, which is you're trying to find opportunities to add value to their businesses, and so it becomes win-win for everyone.
Yep.
And I also like the idea of carrying around the position statements, just be able to show like, hey, look, like this is what's needed, and so that I think would be pretty effective. When you're speaking with folks for the first time, typically, let's say that they sign up with you. Are you displacing typically dealership sublets? Are you displacing other sort of adjacent sublets? Are you displacing? Are they maybe not even doing ADAS calibrations in the first place? I'm just curious, like, when you have these conversations, what are people typically doing at the moment?
Well, yes, yes, and yes. I think
Right.
all three of those definitely still exist today.
Hmm.
Um, I think there's kind of a sway. Most collision centers now have some form of something, but
Sure.
it's still quite vague. And so I wouldn't be able to kind of ballpark a percent, but yeah, it's either one of those three. It's either we're displacing a different sublet provider that's kind of already been in the market or is a national brand. We're replacing the dealerships when collision centers don't do it in-house, they don't use a sublet, but yet they're sending everything to the dealership,
Hmm.
right? We come in and typically replace the dealership. And then, of course, when we find people that are not doing calibrations at all, we're just uh, filling in that gap.
Okay, got it. Is there one type of business that's the easiest to sell into of those three?
Well, of course, the one where the space is wide open and there are collision centers that are not really doing anything other than clearing codes. That's
Mm,
the easiest. But
sure.
in terms of the other two, I think, with ADAS Safe and the operating system Trak that ADAS Safe operates with, I think it's easier to replace other ADAS sublets right now. Um, but that's probably debatable, right? There's some collision centers just like to send to the dealership because again, they've been doing that for the past 30 years when a strange problem comes up. And
Hmm.
that's kind of what ADAS gets classified under sometimes. So I would say it's about half and half
Okay, got it.
for those two.
Yeah. So I'm curious, like, apart from the position statements, is there anything else you'll bring to an initial meeting? Like
Yeah.
other materials or tools, just will we bring a scan tool, for example, or just help me, or the full frame, just like, hey, let me do a calibration right
No,
now.
it's so funny. Yes. So, when I was with ADAS Safe, and still ADAS Safe, I think still does this till this day. We have a lot of different marketing materials, so we're very organized and cadenced with our visits. So,
Hmm.
without giving away too much, I'll kind of say what we do. But, let's just say we're going into a new market. And there are, for easy math, 10 collision centers in that market that we want to target and try to offer ADAS services to. We will go to, 5 or 10 one day and wait 3 or 4 days before going back there. And we have specific pieces of marketing material to give them each day in a row.
Hmm. Okay.
So the first one might be a kind of general flyer, general information about us, who we are, what we do, how we add value.
Sure.
The second one might be position statements, like I mentioned before. The third might be a follow-up email, because right now that I've got their business card and I can send them kind of some of our informational videos. So we're very structured when it comes to our visits and making these relationships with people. And we do have, I don't know how many at this point, but we've got at least 5, 6, 7 pieces of marketing materials printed out, that we give, you know, in person to
Hmm.
everyone that we visit.
Okay, got it.
Mhm.
So you're showing with marketing materials, uh, that's very helpful, and I guess in a way that develops, your expertise, right? Like, hey, we can continue to show you, you know, ways that you can make more money, um, and sort of this like almost like drip marketing, right?
Yep.
Vis-a-vis the potential customer. Yeah. Will you do demos with them? Just tell me more about like because I feel like it's one thing to talk to the process, it's another to actually demonstrate it, right? So I'm just curious what you'll do on that
Yeah,
side.
great question. I mean, something that we've relied on for a very long time is Trak. Um, this is the operating software that ADAS Safe runs on. So not only does it map and scrub the estimates
Okay.
and tell our technicians what calibrations are required, but the body shops that we service can actually go in there and see for themselves what calibrations are required. And so a lot of the times when we are walking into collision centers and kind of hunting for new business and even nurturing as well, right? There's both sides there. We'll have Track showed and displayed on our iPads, phones, computers, um, the software, and kind of helping educate them on what
Mm.
calibrations are required in real time. And so they're able to go into the software, play around with it, see, oh wow, I am going to drag in this estimate that I just wrote this morning, right? And I'm the collision center, kind of talking out loud here. I'm going to drag
Hmm.
it into Track and see what's required. I would
Oh.
previously never get anything, calibrated on this car because there's no lights on the dash. But now that they're playing around in Track, they're dropping in the estimates, they can schedule through
Mm.
there, they can see past invoices, analytics, all sorts of things. We really use that as a tool to spark interest and credibility,
Yeah.
as well as a lot of things. We use that and rely on that heavily to expand and to also nurture.
Interesting. Interesting. Um, so you kind of give them access as you'll give them access to Track. They can upload their invoices, and basically see what they're missing out on, right? Um,
Exactly. And
okay.
it works with CCC Secure Share too. So sometimes, again, we'll go in there after the second, third visit, set up CCC Secure Share on their computer and Track,
Hmm.
give them their own login, and then they're kind of off to the races, right? It's all automatic. They're able to go in, refresh the page and Track and see, okay, I wrote 10 estimates this morning. Here they all are in Track automatically. Here's how many calibrations are required. And then when those
Mm.
cars are done through the repair process, they just hit schedule now, one button, and our tech is dispatched. So it has really helped us in all regards.
Hmm. That's really interesting. I like the, scrub to one click scheduling. That's pretty nice. Um, Speaking of which, you mentioned that okay, you're maybe demoing Track here and there. You're coming in with marketing materials. Once you have the relationship, like what's the right level of, touch points with the customer?
Mm.
Um, you know, how often are you checking in on them? Or are you just checking in on them whenever you drop off a car, and similarly, if you have a customer that hasn't yet converted, how often are you checking in with them? Um, and that's probably the more important question, right? Because you haven't earned their
Sure.
business yet. So yeah, for those that are yet to be converted, what's the right balance of being persistent versus not being annoying?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's a really important balance that that you need to balance. Uh, you definitely don't want to bug people. They're busy, right? They're writing estimates, they're making sure parts are coming in and rental cars are not being delayed, et cetera, et cetera. Pre-sale, right? When the relationship is not formed and you're not calibrating vehicles with collision centers and shops that you would like to, there's a really healthy balance of not annoying them versus being persistent and educating them. I think, generally speaking, what has worked really well for us is doing what feels natural, is going in there again. This is kind of a win-win for all parties involved when the relationship is formed. And so going in there and not trying to necessarily sell, but educate and develop a relationship is really important.
Mhm.
If you try to just sell, sell, sell all the time and say you're going to make X amount of money and all that, that's not always, the most effective way to do things. So, we have some shops that are really strong, consistent clients in markets that it took 4 months of kind of persistent outreach, but not
Mm,
overreaching outreach, annoying outreach, to actually gain their trust and get that chance on that first vehicle or first three vehicles. Um, I would say it really depends on the person that you're talking to and the person that you're targeting. Um, but you want to do what feels natural, right? If someone is giving you a response that kind of feels like they're annoyed, back off, right? There's no reason to keep pushing it, and doing it with again, that win-win in mind, educating, helping, not selling, more customer success rather than sales, I think is really important.
yeah.
Um, and then just always being there as even a backup, right? And so if they're content with whatever they're doing, whether they're doing calibrations or not, if the answer is no, hey, that's totally fine. We're going to be here if you ever want to give us a shot, or if you have a problem vehicle, right? Give us a
Right.
call. We'll try to
Right.
solve that problem vehicle, because those always come up. And then of course, when that phone call does come, and it usually does come, right? Whether it's a month later or 4 or 5 months later, I'll still get calls today from people I haven't seen in 6 months, uh, getting that call. But then once you get that call, it's on, right? You got to kind of perform, see if you can solve that problem vehicle, and
Mhm.
then it transitions to post sale, right?
Right. Yeah, for me, I think I always encourage people to be like a little bit more proactive than they're probably used to.
Mhm.
And it's just the nature of the beast. I mean, everyone's busy in this industry and it's hard to get their attention. I think that, you know, you should focus on small wins. Like, hey, like, let me take a look at an estimate, right? Let me do something small for you. Let me drop off this piece of information. Let me walk the lot for you. Uh, how can I help, right? And that sort of ethos, I think, really creates that trust, such that that call does come in one day, right? And
Exactly.
and to your point, I think you mentioned like, okay, first it starts small, but as they build that trust, there'll be more volumes, right? So,
Yep.
your month one volumes with a certain shop should not be indicative of where it could be in 12 or 24 months, right?
Exactly. And especially with the number of vehicles that require calibration continuing to increase, right? As time goes on and those old cars get out of market,
Hmm.
that will also increase and kind of expedite the what we call integration rate, which is an important metric that everyone should track, which is the amount of again, the 100 vehicles, what percent of those 100 are you calibrating? It's kind of a percentage right there. Per market, it's different, and that'll continue to increase, right, as time goes on and as
Yeah,
trust builds.
right, right. Do you think there's still a big element of education, or do you think people are all pretty aware of the need for ADAS calibrations? Just, you know, how much how much education did you have to do when you were on your shop visits?
Well, I think that the short answer is a lot.
Okay.
I think that in the last 2 years, it has increased a ton. I think people are becoming a lot more educated, but still across the board, I think most people understand that calibrations need to get done, but exactly what calibrations need to get done, how they're priced, right, what verbiage to add, and all these small nuances. There's still, I think, a lot of work to be done. I think
And it's still evolving, right? Like we have new systems coming
still
out,
evolving.
new procedures, and yeah, new equipment, new software, right? So it's always changing.
Yep. Yep. That's right.
Boundaries always moving. Yeah. Okay. But I hear you in that awareness is high, but still there's a need to educate around the specifics, the granularities, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And really the importance of calibrating everything that needs to be calibrated, because again, I think that the real delta here is when there are no lights on the dashboard. Those collision centers are seeing no lights on the dashboard and thinking that this doesn't need a calibration, or maybe they kind of know that it needs a calibration, but there's bigger priorities on hand. And so educating, reinstilling the importance of calibrations is really important,
Okay.
especially during a time where it's growing so much.
Right. Right. I'm curious, like when you speak with customers, like what are their biggest pain points, either with even yourselves, right? Or the whole system of ADAS calibrations. Just I'm curious, like what pain points do you hear the most?
Yeah, I think there's really kind of two. One
Mhm.
I would generally call just general confusion, right? It's kind of what I just said is what calibrations are truly required. What are the prices that we're going to get paid by the insurance companies,
Sure.
right? And those
Hmm.
differ. Uh, how do I communicate this to the vehicle owner? Do I need to communicate this to the vehicle owner? There's a lot of uncertainty, a lack of standardization in that regard, which I would just kind of call general confusion, which really leads to the true pain point, which is what we hear a lot is, I just kind of don't want to deal with it. I want, someone else to deal with it and take care of it. Um, which is kind of why the sublet works a lot because that ADAS
Mm,
sublet really does take care of it, right? They're walking the lot. They're identifying everything that needs to be calibrated. They're providing all the documentation and helping with the insurance side of that as well. So there's that, and then there's the other kind of half of it where it's timing, right? It's I know this has to get done. Again, this is kind of what we hear sometimes. I know this has to get done. This car needs to be calibrated, but it's Friday. There's no lights on the dash. I'm going to ship it. I don't want the car rental days to go up. Um, and that becomes very complicated as well. So there's just a
yeah.
lack of standardization. There's no central ERP system for it.
Hmm.
So those are two
Yeah.
things.
Two
Yep.
frustrations. Okay.
Yep.
Um, and I'm curious, to what extent do you help your customers manage the whole insurance process?
Mm. That's a good question. So for ADAS Safe, again, we use Trak, and Trak puts all of our technicians on a very standardized path to do a calibration. So
Okay.
we require things like taking certain pictures during the calibration process to ensure that we're doing the calibrations correctly, documenting and proving that these calibrations are not only getting done, but getting done properly.
Correctly. Yep.
And so Track allows us to bundle up a lot of documentation, pre-scan, post-scan for corner pictures, setup pictures, calibration success pictures, estimate, required calibration report. It packages all that up for our
Hmm.
technicians to go through the calibration process very smoothly and consistently every time.
Right.
And so what Track does and what our technicians ultimately do throughout the calibration process is it bundles all of that documentation, wraps it up in a folder, and is sent out to the body shop every single vehicle. So on
Okay.
every vehicle, they're getting a full packet that they'll just usually drag and drop over to the insurance side in CCC. Um, and
Mm,
then beyond that, we're really allowing people to have preset pricing. So like the State Farm pricing or the Geico pricing. Um, certain shops will need to adhere to that. So we can do
mm.
that inside of Track 2. There's abilities there. So we kind of help as much as we can, really, as much as we possibly can, and as much as the shops want us to.
Okay. That's really interesting. Um, but you don't really step in between the shop and the insurance company, or do you?
So it depends. I would say it's about 50-50. Some
Okay.
shops don't want us to interact with the insurance company at all. The other half of the shops really do. They would prefer that we do. So we do both.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yep.
Got it. Okay. Sounds. Um, I think, well, just lastly, are there any like good tips you would give for anyone who's looking to like up their game in terms of, the sales and marketing for ADAS sublet? Like, what are the 2 to 3 things that you felt to be most um, impactful for driving conversions?
Yeah. I think I don't know if I have two or three off the top of my head, but I think the number one most important thing, and this might be almost buzzwordy or cliche to say, but really try to listen. I
Hmm.
think that, um, was something I had to learn rather quickly, especially in this industry. Uh, approaching these conversations kind of with the Aristotle method of asking questions to pull information is just really effective. It not only develops the relationship, it builds trust, uh, and you really want to understand the operators and owners of the people that you're going to be doing business with, right?
Right.
Again, this is a win-win situation. Keep it casual. This is, kind of, it's high stakes, but it's low stakes at the same time. So really just try to understand who you're talking to, understand what their pain points are, so that you can then present them a solution and say, here are the pain points that you have that I've heard. Here's a solution that I'm going to offer. And then kind of formulate a yes no conclusion out of that. If it's a no, then maybe follow up in 2 or 3 weeks and see if that no maybe merges to a maybe. And if it's a yes, great, you've done a great job, and now it's where the rubber meets the road, and you got to provide good service. So
Right.
I think that's the number one thing, off the top of my head, is really just listen and be firm. Try to get a yes or no answer, and be direct. Yeah, and
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah.
Just listen.
Okay. Got it. Got it. All right. Well, that's more than enough to chew on as far as like how to accelerate your sales and marketing as an ADAS sublet. Again, it's been great to see the growth of ADAS Safe, and we want you guys to continue to do well. But yeah, Will, thanks so much for stopping by and giving us some tips on just on growth. I think it's a growth industry, and every year I think there's more awareness, but also more necessity to invest in the latest training and information and so forth, just to make sure that you're ahead of the curve. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, Darren,
Um,
thanks very much for having me. Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of opportunity out there. Um, and as we continue to see the space evolve and calibrations continue to grow,
mhm.
those opportunities will only increase. And so,
Yes.
yeah, we're really excited to be here. Again, appreciate the time, and this was fun.
All right. Thanks so much, Will.
See you, Darren.
All right. Take care.